Hi guys, my name is Mike Power. I'm a carpenter with the Carpenters in New York City, Local 157. I'm a candidate for EST in the upcoming election, the end of this March. I had a couple of questions asked me from some of the membership that came to my attention via instant messages. So I brought my friend here, Mike Biella, who's a former EST, and he served in the district council. He has over 50 years in the business. Actually, Mike can give you a little bit more about his history.
Yeah, I started back in 1975 as a first-year apprentice. I joined Local 257, now in 157, as Mike is. I did my apprenticeship. I worked a little bit in the dock builder Local 1456 at the time. I was a commercial diver. Went back into the building construction end of it. Became a business agent in 1998 for a little bit, and then went back on my tools and was elected executive secretary treasurer of the New York City District Council of Carpenters in 2011, took office in 2012, and I retired in 2013.
Excellent. All right, so the main part of this video is to bring up some questions that the members have brought to my attention. So one of the main things was members came to me while I was running. So I have a little bit of history in the business, being third generation carpenter, having family in the business, and I understood a lot of the stuff that went on back in the 80s and the 90s with the corruption. A lot of members don't know that back in the day, all the work came out of the hall, all shop stewards were appointed by the business agents, which actually put a lot of restrictions. A lot of shop stewards today wouldn't be a shop steward if it wasn't for the stipulation and order, and what caused the union to change the program and how shop stewards were certified. Like, there was an old joke in my local back in the day: if you didn't have an Irish brogue, you weren't a shop steward. It's a joke, but it was true. So that's the way it worked right here. So one of the questions somebody came to me today is, what is your opinion on the end of the consent decree? So I have a question on it, but first I want to ask Mike his question on what he believes. What is your opinion, Mike? What would be on the end of the consent decree? What do you think would be the outcome of that?
So, if the consent decree came to an end tomorrow, we would lose what I like to call the invisible force field around the New York City District Council. We've been protected from the UBC, from General President Doug McCarron's restructuring of the organization, and from being merged into surrounding district councils and becoming part of a regional council. The reason that has not happened is because the consent decree would have to follow the New York City District Council, and wherever we were merged into would be subject to the terms of the consent decree.
Now, Mike, that happened while you were EST, right? They made an attempt to actually...
There was an attempt at the time to initially take the dock builder and timberman local and also the millwright local and put the millwrights into the millwright council that was established in the Northeast, and also do the same with the dock builders in one of the surrounding councils that was based out of New Jersey at the time. I had filed a motion in federal court with the judge that oversees the consent decree, stating that if they're going to take those two locals, that the consent decree would follow. And the judge agreed with that, and that pretty much put an end to the plan of removing them locals from this district council.
So it's safe to say the act of consent decree would save this?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
As a former EST, can I ask you a question? What is your opinion if we lose the consent decree? A lot of people are being told different stories, like it's being put on the shelf, it's being put in your back pocket, whatever. But if you read the documents in the courts, it's actually saying the words supersede and replace, which means, the way I interpret it, and I'm pretty sure the way you interpret it, coming next January, there will be no more consent decree. If that was to take place and they pulled the millwrights out of here and the dock builders and timbermen, if that was their overall plan, what would that do to the funds, losing those man hours? Would you say we would lose 55, we would lose the medical? I mean, that would be, I mean, losing the dock builders would be a huge thing. It's a lot of public works hours coming into the funds and the millwright hours. I mean, together, I think we have one of the best pension plans and retirement medical of anywhere else in the country, so why would we want to merge with another council? It doesn't make any sense to me. That's one of the reasons why I'm throwing my hat in the ring, to try to defend that. But you as a former EST, knowing the numbers, knowing what goes on, what would be the repercussions to that? If we lost those man hours, you think we'd be done? Would that be?
Well, first of all, I don't think it would just be the millwrights and the dock builders at this point. I would think it's going to be the whole district council. Once the consent decree is gone, and like you said, the language in the stipulation and order that was just signed this past December 5th of 2024 says that the consent decree will be superseded and replaced. That means it's no longer enforceable. So if we are merged, the whole district council is merged with one of the adjoining regional councils, we're going to have, eventually they'll merge the pension fund, the welfare fund, all the funds into one of those current regional councils. The boundaries of the city now will no longer be just for the New York City members. They'll be for anyone in the regional councils. I mean, we have out-of-towners working here now. I get that, but we'll see the competition for the jobs in the city increased even more, number one. We'll lose the rank and file election of EST president and vice president
That was going to be my next question.
of the district council. That'll happen. That's part of the consent decree that was established under the consent decree. Without the consent decree in place, we'll go to a delegate vote for those three top positions of the district council. And it'll be for the regional council. We'll be part of a regional council, and the election will be.
So everything we have established right now, and that was put in there because of judge's orders and like as far as certified shop stewards, all that stuff would come to an end, right? We'd be merged into a bigger conglomerate, and that list would become something bigger, right? Like as far as, so it would be the whole Northeast Regional would all be part of one big local.
Right, so for those who are not familiar with the terms of the consent decree, there were some major points. Number one was to get rid of the organized crime factor. And any affiliation with organized crime is, under the terms of the consent decree, you can't be a member of this district council, right? Number two was to promote democracy and have a rank and file election of the top offices of the district council. One man, one vote. That would go away. The out-of-work list was formed under the consent decree, where the next man on the list is dispatched to the job, providing they have the qualifications listed for that job, right? The shop stewards will not have to be, chosen in order of the out-of-work list, but like you said, they can be picked by the business agent, whether it's from someone on the crew or someone that they send there.
Yeah, like they do in the specialty local. So a lot of these
Right,
members,
some of that does exist to some extent here with the dock builders.
the members would have to realize it would be a whole new ball game. It'd be a whole new game involved. What would the basic agenda we have now would change if they took over? It would
Correct.
They'd rewrite all the rules.
When the consent decree took effect, a lot of members who were never given the opportunity to be shop stewards were able to become shop stewards. It wasn't the same guys being.
Or the traveling stewards of the day.
Right.
Remember, a lot of guys used to travel.
There were traveling stewards guy worked for one company on this job, then that job finished, he moved to the next job and the next job and so on and so forth.
Now, with your 50 years experience, you would admit that the idea of the steward being independent and coming out the hall is more of a practical reason for corruption and everything, right? To have that separate entity on the job site.
Absolutely necessary.
I think it keeps the man hours and everything in order. It keeps a new set of eyes on the job and someone who's not in somebody's back pocket.
Right.
Because a company guy who's worked for a company steady for say 10 or 20 years, his
he's got a family and everything like that, sometimes it's harder for him to speak up. Not to undermine the guy, but it takes a certain person to be a steward. Not everyone is cut out to do it, because I've had guys in the days tell me, oh, I don't wanna cause any waves. I said, well, then maybe you should be the shop steward if you don't wanna, if you don't wanna step up for the guys.
Exactly.
That's basically.
And a lot of guys who work for the same company from job to job to job, they want a good steward from the whole. They want a guy who comes to the job and produces, but they want a guy who comes to the job and protects their interests.
Because even the good company men, when I've been a steward for a large part of my career, and I did it mostly to do the right thing for the men, because I always knew that I could do that. And over those years, I always thought that if I argued a good argument, I built a good relationship with both the men, the supers, and the owners. Because most of the time, if you go to somebody and you're legit, they might not like what you have to say to them, but at the end of the argument, most of the guys, they respect you for doing what you're doing, because you're doing your job. And if you're standing up for the men, because in this industry, not everybody walks into it. Like, I was born into the industry, I'm third generation, but the average guy might have stumbled upon it, and a guy got into the business. But what keeps people here is, they have an annuity, they have a pension, they have medical, and they see growth in the industry. If you get in here, there's a lot of opportunities for you. You become a site safety manager, you become a shop steward, you can work your way through the industry and become a project manager, a super. There's opportunity there for the guy who wants to do it. Don't get me wrong, you're a guy, Johnny Lunchbox, you want to put a tool belt on, you can make a great living doing that. And a lot of guys I know, they specialize in ceilings and woodworking, and which I think back in the day was easier to do that. Now it's a little bit harder, but back in the day it was easier to move around from job to job. But giving people those opportunities to me is what makes the union what it really is, because it builds a much more rounded, skilled trade worker. And having guys on the job that aren't being exploited, that's where the steward comes in, because you need a voice in the job. And everybody, they want that guy. They want that guy that's going to stand up for them.
All right, Mike, I want to get to the part here was the stuff with NYCHA that brought everyone's attention. I started with NYCHA back in 2019. And when I started with NYCHA, I met with one of the Carpenter supervisors, Dave Weaver, very respected guy. Guy had about 41 years with NYCHA. And he was a supervisor in Carpenter with NYCHA. And he got into a whole conversation with me about going down to the city hall and discussing about all these non-union contractors doing all this work for NYCHA and how they were doing substandard work, and nobody was ready to work with NYCHA. And I got to him about the whole thing about with the PLA with NYCHA, and he knew part of it, but no one ever explained it to him in detail. And he had a big meeting down in City Hall, and no one from the council even came down to meet him, and the whole thing got blown out onto the table. So with that information, I started keeping an eye out what was going on with NYCHA and the contract work, where I reached out to you back then. And one of the things was a job at Cypress Houses. It was $185 million worth of work. I think with the extras, when everything was said and done, I think the job came just over $250 million worth of work that was done there. They redid all the boiler rooms. I think something around 2,500 new door bucks and door frames, bunch of concrete work. But the work was going on for 2.5 years. They were using 10 laborers to do our concrete work. I reached out to you. I made a call to Paul Caperso. They sent Mandy Flukes out, who's the business agent for NYCHA. He showed up on the job, met with the contractor, told them that I was the problem, and told them to go on with what they were doing and everything would be okay. So when I realized I wasn't getting any momentum with that, I made a reach out to Anthony Pena for the International, and Anthony Pena got in touch with Doug McCarron, our general president, and from there they reached out to Eddie McWilliams, who reached out to Jerry Matthews. This was all taking place on a Saturday and Sunday at 10 o'clock at night. Make a long story short, they agreed to have a job meeting. Everyone was supposed to show up. No one showed but me and Jerry Matthews. We met with the guys from 10 Laborers. Jerry agreed with me 100% that it was my work that it belonged to the Carpenters. They brought the grievance against them, and we won it, and we got that work back. We actually put guys on that job for just under 3 years worth of work. But the bottom line was, in my opinion, that was a perfect example of, in order for that to fail, so many people had to be negligent and incompetent to not do their job. I mean,
and I second guessed myself through it. I remember talking to you about it, like, this can't be this bad. And then you actually told me, if it looks like a pig, it's not like a pig, it's probably a pig. This situation was that bad. What would be what's your opinion on how this thing got so out of control? I mean, am I wrong to believe that this all comes from the top down, that the leadership like Joe Geiger and Paul Caperso and Dave Carveloso, this falls on their lap, right? This is their job. Now that Paul's actually the pro temp BST, this falls on his lap, right? Like, shouldn't they be leading by example? How did they? I mean, this is either two things that cause this. Either it's corruption or incompetence. But either way, it's costing members jobs and it's costing us money and hours out of our funds. So how would you think we should?
Correct. Just first, I want to say the way that you handled that from the beginning was absolutely by the book. You became aware of what was going on around you. As a good union member, you looked at jobs, scaffolding going up, for instance. You asked, the guys working there for their cards. You spoke to them, asked for the steward. When you became aware by doing that there was either no steward or those guys communicated to you that they weren't getting benefits or they were way behind in their benefits, you made the phone call to the business agent covering the job. You didn't get satisfaction, so you went to Paul Caperso. At the time was the lead business representative for the area, right? So you did all of that. And then when you still didn't get satisfaction, we spoke back and forth about this. I suggested that you go to Joe Geiger directly and ask him for a sit down, which he did give you, right? You had a meeting with him. And it became apparent that he was just putting up roadblocks and not doing what needed to be done here. And you patiently dealt with all the levels of authority in the organization, to get to Joe and for Joe to do the right thing here. And it became apparent that he wasn't doing the right thing. He was putting up roadblocks. So why, we don't know. I mean, it's either gross incompetence, ineptitude, or it's corruption. It's one or the other.
I mean, Mike, how many members would have went to the level I went to? I went to the point where I wrote a letter to the general president.
You did.
And I had we scheduled another meeting with Joe Geiger, who we brought in Capisi,
Matt Capisi.
Matt Capisi, which was the wage fraud attorney for
the International.
The International. I brought in a friend of mine, Elisa Goldberg. She actually got involved to help me out. I've known Elisa many, many years. She's a corporate attorney. She has a large law firm in Manhattan, and she's very schooled, and she's an awesome attorney. You've met her. You can vouch for her.
I have.
Credibility and what it was. She sat down with me, and we went over all the stuff that was going on. We actually interviewed a lot of the workers that weren't getting paid benefits. A lot of them were kept off the job. They kept off the payroll. A lot of them were being paid cash. We documented all that information. We met with the wage fraud attorney from Matt from the International. We discussed with them about it, what was going on. We actually filed the documents with state court. It was $3.8 million in missing benefits and pay for these workers. Now that some of these workers were never signed up in the union, so the money that was allocated for that went directly to the workers because they were never given a union card. All that benefit money got paid to them. So it was millions of dollars that were never paid to our funds because there was never a steward on the site, or the steward that was on the site wasn't taken.
And also because Joe Geiger didn't cooperate.
And Joe Geiger wouldn't cooperate.
Otherwise, some of that money would have gone into our funds.
Yeah, when we sent the subpoena to the three, we sent it to Joe and Paul, and neither one of them refused to answer the subpoena. They fought it actually tooth and nail, which to me this day doesn't make any sense, because if you were working in the best interests of the membership, I sat with these members and I sat with their wives, I sat with their families, and I saw how not having business agents that weren't doing their job and stepping up to the plate, that was causing these people to not have medical coverage. And one guy said to me, he goes, I do everything right. I go to work every day. He goes, I worked all last year and I have no medical coverage. So what do you say to someone like that? Like the guy, he's done everything right, and he's working, he's fighting with the contractor to get his paycheck and fighting for his benefits. Meanwhile, he's doing civil service work, and a lot of people don't understand that affidavit contractors that work for the city of New York, there's a thing put in the contract for them that says if they're allocated to pay the benefits, and if they're not, all they have to do within 15 days is the union or the organization is contact NYCHA, and NYCHA will immediately redirect the money from the payments directly to the benefit funds. So there's something in place that actually stops this from happening, but somehow we dropped the ball. We didn't do anything about it.
This is a tremendous failure by the union. I mean, all the safeguards are in place, the PLA, the provisions, like you just explained, that allow us to recoup the benefits that are owed our members if the contractors aren't paying on time, or else the contractors don't get paid, we get paid straight from NYCHA. It's all there. And the failure was on the part of the union, the District Council of Carpenters.
Now, through my career, as I understood what a PLA is. A lot of members might know that the public labor agreement is what a PLA is.
Project labor agreement.
Project labor agreement. So basically what happens with these project labor agreements is there are stipulations put in with the city, and they have their own guidelines, but to pay prevailing rate, and they'll have certain stipulations in it that might make all the trades work together in the same collective bargaining agreement, as far as holidays and getting certain things as far as payment, everything. So when you hit the threshold, like with NYCHA, I know the number is $250,000. Is a threshold. So anything up to the $250,000 number would go under the PLA. Anything under that, no matter what, all these jobs have to pay prevailing rate. Now, I think also would be very important for our business agents, no matter what the job is, every job should be policed. We should have our guys in the field. At the very least, making sure any guy wearing a tool belt should be getting paid prevailing rate. I have videos and documents that I turned over to the U.S. Attorney's Office showing workers on the job site, guys getting paid $65 a day for doing mortar and setting door bucks on NYCHA projects in the city. Out of that, there was a big investigation done, and 70 office managers and higher-ups in NYCHA were all indicted. A lot of it came from the information that I turned over to the U.S. Attorney's Office. But as far as the PLA's work, as far as NYCHA goes after, there was the floor covering stuff that we uncovered, and I did a lot of that with Mike Zemsky, and we found out of 100 jobs that were put out to bid for labor-only bid, meaning NYCHA was supplying all the material. Out of 100 jobs, we had 88 of them come in at $249,999.99. So to do the math, that means we lost $23 million worth of work for 88 cents. So somebody wasn't doing their job. Somebody manipulated the system to drop it a penny below the work, and some of those jobs, if you look at it, it's the same company. So it doesn't matter if they award, if it's $250,000 within a certain period of time. So that work belonged to us no matter how you look at it. But somebody in that agency avoided the situation, and our guys were, this is all public works information. They weren't even, they have a right to be following this, so someone didn't do their job.
Right. And just to be clear, what you spoke about with that 88 cents, you looked at 88 contracts that were given out of way many more than that. But that's what you sampled.
This is a 14 months. Those were the 100 jobs. Out of those 100 jobs, 88 of them came in at $249,999.99.
Right.
Now the other jobs were
above the threshold.
Now,
right.
But the threshold jobs, if they come packed together, because the clerk's office should be doing it, they're awarding you a job for $60,000 and one for $100,000. When you hit that 250 mark, they combine together. They're not allowed to self-divide them.
Right.
Just like they shouldn't be giving out 88 jobs at 1 penny below the PLA. Clearly, somebody
Right,
manipulated the system.
and it was all public information that there for the looking, and like you said, you and Zemsky, you went through those particular jobs, that 100 listed jobs out of how many, jobs NYCHA gives out in a given period, and you were just able to see 88% of them were fraudulent.
Fraudulent, correct. And this is $23 million of labor-only work. This is a lot of work. I was told by Mandy Fuchs one day, and Paul mentioned in a comment one time that, oh, guys don't want those jobs. They don't want to work on the projects. That's what they were told to me, which I find hard to believe because I think a paycheck's a paycheck. Guys will take work. They need to get to work.
Absolutely.
You know,
That's why we have that PLA in place. We want the work.
yeah. So my question is, if we can't even police the work we have, I mean, we go to the international and they have these training seminars out in Vegas. They talk about 70% of the market share. But my attitude is, we can't police the 30% we have. I mean, we could have 100% of the market share tomorrow morning. We can't police it.
It's
right
a
there.
problem. And, we can't rely on, whether it's law enforcement or public agencies, to police it for us. That's the union's job, is to police that work. That's why we have business agents. They should be out there, shop stewards.
An educated workforce. Okay?
And when the members see them out there doing their jobs and trying and capturing this work and making sure that our members are paid the correct wages and benefits that they're entitled to, and all the money is going into the funds and into their paychecks where it's supposed to go, then you get them engaged where they'll be picking up the phone and reporting the jobs, they'll be checking for union cards on the jobs, they'll be doing their part. But if they see the failure at the top, they're not going to bother.
Mike, I had a problem at NYCHA, which I brought you involved in it, and I know this can work because this proved it. I watched the contractors come on a job with a bunch of equipment for trash compactor work. I called you first thing in the morning when I saw the work. I took pictures of the stuff in the parking lot,
I remember.
and then I called you for Mike Kavanaugh's number, and you called me right away. I spoke to Mike Kavanaugh for maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes on the phone.
Who's out of the Millwright
He
local,
was the
just
Millwright local,
for
and
everyone.
He was the vice president of the district council at the time. And Mike said, absolutely, that's my work. He contacted one of his business agents. I can't remember the BA's name off the top of my head. He actually called me twice afterwards, which is another thing I'll bring up. But they came out to the job. They had their little thing. I had run into the owner of the company the next day. He wasn't happy to see me because he was a little pissed off that I dropped a dime on him. But his attitude did change after he got to meet the millwrights and how great of a job they were doing. His attitude to me totally changed because he said, these guys are awesome. I don't even have to watch them. They're on the ball and everything like that. But the one thing I always noticed was after Mike did it, his business agent went out of the way to call me the following day to say, Mike, I missed you on the job site. I was out there, but we got everything on the up and up. And they did. They got all that stuff locked down. And actually, believe it right now, I think they're still there working on those trash compactor grounds and all this. So
Yeah, that's a success story. Unfortunately, that's a small percentage of the work that is there.
But it can be done.
But it can be done.
It can be done. This is
Absolutely.
the problem. Like, guys don't realize that, just because you're working and you got that luxury and you're going to work, there's a guy sitting home. And the way this whole system works is I'm supposed to be the eyes and ears for the next guy. And we got to teach that to the next generation. I think that's something that was lost between us, that we don't understand it.
We just don't want to say, we got the millwright work. We want to be able to sit here and say, yeah, we got the scaffolding work. We got that all straightened out, all the drywall, all the concrete work, all of it. We want all of it.
That's another thing with the city carpenters as well. I think a lot of the city carpenters that came in there, that I've worked in the industry, I'd say a good 70% of them never taken the union prior to taking the civil service test, which is changing now. I pushed a lot of people to take the civil service test. But we should be really tapping into that resource and working with our city civil service director, Martin Leiden, who I tried to work with too about as far as having meetings with our civil service carpenters, discussing with them what our trade entails, because a lot of them don't understand what a millwright does. They might not understand what a dock builder does. They don't understand the different aspects of our job and what we do, because a lot of these guys might have had their own businesses, took the civil service test, which they had a right to, became picked up by an agency, and now they're union carpenters. And most of these guys are great workers, and they try to report work, but they a lot of times when they called up the council, they've been told by people in the council, don't worry about it, just be happy you have a job, and they get discouraged and they walk away. But I think that's a resource there that we need to tap into. But I don't think with the leadership there, I don't think that'll ever happen.
Right, we have some education to do as far as, if you will, the civics of how the organization works and how one member can help a brother floor coverer or a millwright just by being aware of what our trade encompasses and, how to protect that jurisdiction, and not, just ignore it.
It's every member has a right to card another member. People,
Absolutely.
a lot of union members don't realize it. You're protected. You're protecting the
Right,
law.
and these are all things that really need to be taught, As an apprentice, I was taught that by guys on the job, but that was back in the 70s. It's different now.
Just like a member, when I was ever carded by another member, I considered that an honor. I was actually happy to see that happen.
Sure.
Some guys get mad at it, but I think the guys who get
Right.
mad at it are the guys that have something to hide. But the guys who appreciate it, because that someone protecting the industry and protecting my livelihood, that's my livelihood, that's my pension, because we all have an expiration date. You're retired how many years now?
Since 2013,
Yeah. So,
12 years, right?
At the end of the day, I just turned 53. The clock's ticking on me too. We're going to hand this is going to get handed off to somebody else. I just hope that
And
they.
by the way, to elaborate on our earlier discussion about the consent decree, retirees around the jurisdiction of the UBC, being the whole 50 states and Canada, in these mergers, retirees have lost their medical coverage.
I tell you what, on the majority they do, and the few that do have it, they have a large Cobra thing. I think the average I'm hearing right now is about $600 to $800 a month. So that would be most places that guys do retire at the 55. I know Long Island has no medical for their retirees.
Yeah, so we're very fortunate in New York City to have the ability to retire at 55 and have full medical coverage for you and your family, and pay a very small premium for it, very small.
And I also think we have an obligation to our retirees, the guys who put their 40, 50 years in the business and they retired having what they put in front of them, and we have an obligation to protect that. We should do everything in our power, whether it's cutting costs at the council level, putting more foot on the ground. We don't need to hire more business agents. I think we could, like business agents giving out turkeys and book bakes to me, that's what they were hired to do. And I think we have a lot of this outreach program stuff we're doing, we could easily do that with retirees or volunteers. A business agent was hired to be a business agent, an organizer was hired to be an organizer. And I know how to fix stuff with all these city agency jobs, I know as well as you do, guys did in the past. You and Dempsey told me stories. I mean, we could easily do blitzes on jobs on Saturdays and Sundays and easily pick these guys apart, left by right. And we
Yeah,
could bring in,
back in the 90s, we went after the scaffolding industry, which was totally corrupt at the time. And
all we gotta do is get some of these retirees, bring them in as volunteers or put them on a stipend and have them walk these jobs with these organizers. To me, there's no one better to talk to a non-union carpenter or a union carpenter who's might be cheating the system than a guy who retired collecting a pension check, because that's your final goal in life. Because I've talked to guys in the union that worked back in the 80s and 90s who were manipulated, who worked for cash, and fast forward, here they are, they're in their 50s and they have 17 credits, 20 credits, and a lot of members might not realize, but come this April, you'll now need 25 credits to retire with medical at 55. So, and you have to work 2,500 hours in the last 5 years to get that. So I don't know what the hours I got correct. It was 1,800, but someone told me it was 25 today. So now, as of April 1st, if you retire before April 1st, you can retire with 20 credits and get full medical. After April 1st, you will need 25 credits to retire. So, people realize those hours, every hour you work counts towards your pension, counts towards
yeah, we'll have to see what those changes are when the letter comes in the mail.
Yeah,
Right.
I think the letter just came out, actually. You might have been left out of the loop, but I think people.
Well, as a retiree, I wouldn't get to
Well,
it.
I don't think it affects you because you're already retired.
Correct.
But it's grandfathering people in. So, but guys don't realize they raised the retirement ages and these other takeovers. Like when you were EST, we were on the trusteeship. When you took over, they were trying to get you to raise the retirement age, like 57 or 60, something like that.
The deal had already been done and was supposed to take effect March 1st of that year. I took office in January, 2 months ahead of it. And it was 57. It was going to be raised to 57 retirement if you wanted the medical with it. So me and the trustees at the time, we stayed late at the council till 10 o'clock most every night, going over the numbers and putting our heads together. And we managed to save the 55 and save the medical. The co-pays they had at the time were astronomical. It would have been $1,700 for a retiree, his wife, and one or more family members. I believe it was $700 and something for a retiree and just his wife, and then a single guy who retired, or women, would have been about 300 and something, if my memory is correct, but it was thereabouts. And we brought those co-pays down to, basically $70-something a month. It was a huge task.
I mean, you came in as EST. Most people don't realize in 2008, I always tell people that was probably the worst economical situation in the city, next to the Depression. It was very
It
slow.
was the worst recession since the Depression, as
Yeah.
they said back
Yeah.
then.
It was, people now talk about people being out of work and how tough times are, but this doesn't hold a match to that. That was the biggest slowdown I probably remember my whole career, and I know a lot. I got lucky. I was working down at the World Trade Center, so I was one of the few people who hooked up with a decent sized job. So, but it was a lot of people I know out of work, and a lot of people lost their homes, and people don't realize
It was a bad time.
Yeah, the stress that it puts on people when they're out of work. Like my father used to always tell me that there's nothing more demeaning to a man than not being able to support his family, and a lot of those people that were out of work, it puts stress on the family, causes divorces. Substance abuse, people find other ways. There's a chain reaction to it. When work is slow, our members, when you can't pay your bills, people go through a major depression. So that's what I'm saying. As leaders, we have to understand that we take on these roles that it's not about us. It's like when I was a delegate, I always said to people, I go, it's not about what I want. It's what's right for the entire membership. I was a single guy with no kids. I can easily say medical is not important, but watching my father, who ended up out of the business at 40 years old, was multiple sclerosis, I knew how important it was for him to have medical for my sisters and my mother and everything like that. And when my father passed away, my mother still has that medical to this day as a secondary policy. So it's important to membership, and we can't give those hours away.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to say. Like I spoke to a member the other day who's 63 years old, whose daughter died in a car accident, and he has both his, I can't say too much about the names because of legal stuff, but he adopted his 2 grandkids, and like he said to me, he would have to pick up another policy to put them on it, but he retired with them on the policy thinking that they'd be covered. And we have an obligation as leaders. That should be a priority thing. And like guys like you who stayed there till 10 o'clock at night, I thank you for that, because a lot of members out there don't realize how much work was put in to keep that 55. Our previous leadership, they take credit for it, but they don't realize how hard it was to keep that going when times are really tough. I think Joe Geiger stepped in a wonderful time. He never had to worry about anything. As soon as he came into office, the economy was booming. You couldn't ask for a better time to be the EST when he was in. There was no work involved.
Yeah.
At one time, you couldn't even man the jobs. That's how busy it was. And then while we literally had contractors that were calling me up. I had people working for one contractor that were going to work for other contractors on the weekend because we couldn't man the jobs. But while this was going on, in the background, they're trying to get a B rate together, which never made sense to me.
Well, during that time, they did create the B rate and the provisional rate before that. So as good as times may have been, the contracts didn't reflect it.
Yeah, but that's just another talk for another time. But these givebacks, none of them have increased market share. So, you can put anything together, but if it's not going to accumulate a new market share, to me, there's no reason for it. Like, in other words, the B rate didn't bring anything to us as far as lower our numbers with the contractor, which gave them more of a profit sharing. We already have it with the apprenticeship. We don't need it to give them another market share. I do understand for organizing efforts to go after the contractor and get their guys on board, but there's gotta be another way to do it than to have a substandard level, or to put our apprenticeship through another 2 or 3 years of man hours.
A tiered system of wages goes against the foundation of the union and why it was founded back in 1881.
That's right, you actually showed me that in the Constitution. It's actually, it actually contradicts its own,
Right.
that we're not supposed to have a 2-tiered system. You know, the idea of the union was to come in as an apprentice, do your 4 years, and be a certified journeyman at that point. So what they do is actually against their own Constitution.
It is.
But I guess they're more worried about their agenda than our agenda.
Well, can't speak to that. All I can say is I don't agree with it.
I think we're doing it.
That was good. That was lengthy, so we
You can
can,
chop it down.
yeah.
The guys are gonna watch it. Are you ready? Just one more thing, and then we can let it go. All right, guys. So we just finished up with a couple of questions here, but like I said, these were some questions that were sent to me through my instant message. But I want to hear from you guys and our brothers and sisters out there in the field. What are your questions? What do you want to know? Feel free to send them to me, and if you can't get the leadership or council, I'll be more than happy to question them as well. And I would actually, I want to invite Paul Caperso to come and sit down with me like Mike Yeller did and answer some questions, and see if he wants to have a one-on-one conference like this. Maybe we could do something up in his office. Maybe we can get clear the air here and get some answers on what's in the contract and the stipulation of order, like as we read, to supersede and replace. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand what those words mean and what that means to the membership when the consent decree goes away, and what his feeling is. I think we should really clear the air so the membership has all the information so they can cast the right vote in their best interest for both them and their families. So thank you, everybody, for giving us some time.
Yeah, I would just like to say in finishing that the current stipulation in order that was signed on December 5th of 2024, signed by Judge Marrero, who oversees the consent decree, has the language that in 1 year from that date, December 5th, the stipulation in order that we currently have in effect will supersede and replace by a negotiated agreement between the district council and the government. So whoever is running the district council, whoever is elected as executive secretary treasurer, will have the ability to negotiate that superseding order. This is what has been signed by the judge. This is what has been filed with the court. This is what the law says now. Replace and supersede. To say that the consent decree is being put on a shelf is a fallacy. It's not enforceable if it's replaced and superseded. So the language of the next stipulation in order is critical to the members of this district council. You have to pay attention to the issues in this election, particularly that, and if you're not clear on it, ask the question. Reach out to Mike. We'll answer the questions for you.
And I just want to say one more thing to that. If I am elected as EST, I will make sure that stipulation in order continues the one man, one vote, so we always have the power to hold our top leadership accountable. And the final stipulation in order, if I'm EST, I will have that put out to a vote to the membership to have approval before we give it to the government for the final stipulation. I will have every member have a vote on that. I want to know if the leadership that's standing there now will do the same thing, because I think it's important. This stipulation is that important that I myself wouldn't approve it without getting the vote from the membership. And I think that's important to make sure that our members have a say in what's going on, because this is their livelihood as well as mine.
Absolutely.
So I think doing that would show what true transparency and accountability is all about.
This is going to affect generations to come.
Yeah, so I think we should all have a say in it. Everyone
Right.
should have it.
People who weren't even born yet before this consent decree was put into place. They need to be paying attention to this also.
And they the stipulation that just happened, they pushed it under the rug. They had people working behind the scenes. Barely anyone even knew to write a letter which you had to write a letter to the council if you had a problem with the existing corruption or anything like that? No one even knew what was
It
going on.
got pushed through very fast.
channels.
We
So they-
expected to have a hearing in court. The hearing never happened. There was talk at the meeting about giving your input, but it got done fast and it got done in a
To
hurry.
me, prior practice tells me in life, when people do stuff like that, they're hiding something.
I agree.
You don't
I
you know,
agree.
speed through something like that. If you're honest like this, you come out and talk to people and put it up. But like I said, I would like to give that invitation to Paul, running for our pro temp EST, that if he has some questions or he'd like to sit down like this, maybe we could do something with the council.
Absolutely,
I'd be happy to come and answer questions. And
absolutely.
the membership should,
I think it would be very beneficial.
yeah, it can't hurt to ask them, so. All right, guys, thank you.
Mike,
Good night.
I think you'll make a great EST.
Thank you for your support, Mike.
I'll be there as long as you need me.
I appreciate it, brother.
Okay.
All right, guys, have a good night.